How much alcohol can the human body consume? Can a bullet be deflected by our internal organs? And why is it that Jack Hanma can't use the demon back? Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name's Dr. Maddie, your doctor from the UK. In today's video, we're going to be taking a second look at the BAKI Hanma anime, specifically the PICKLE Saga. I'm going to be fact-checking some of the science behind these insane scenes, telling you what's realistic and those things that are just BAKI science. Otherwise, if you like these videos and you want to support the channel, please do give this video a like. With that being said, if you're ready, let's begin.
史上最強の動物は何だ? 恐竜。その恐竜で最強は
T-Rex? ティラノサウルスだって?
So, although a T-Rex might have been one of the most powerful animals to have existed, I'm not so sure it's true when you compare it to the size of something like a blue whale. But as power scaling is such a subjective topic, I think we'll let him get away with this one.
人類誕生が700万年前という常識。よもやジュラ紀まで遡ろうとはね。
So, in actual fact, there's no evidence that human history goes this far back. The first species of the Homo genus only goes back about 2.5 million years. And the first of the Homo sapiens species that best resembles what we are today only goes back around 200,000 years. So the chance of there being an undiscovered pickle is pretty much impossible.
5000万年前の岩塩から小さな粒を発見した。微生物が完全体のまま保存されていたのだ。理想的な温度、蘇生したのだよ。
Okay, so this one was pretty interesting, as there are a variety of shrimp that can remain dormant for several years, those being sea monkeys. Now, I remember having these as a pet as a child. You buy a sachet of the eggs, and you can cause these to hatch by placing them in a favourable saline solution, which isn't too dissimilar from what the scientists do in this scene.
微生物を時間という不可抗力から守ったのだ。
だから理屈では可能なんですよ。このピクル君の生き返ることが。
Yeah, so microorganisms can be preserved in a salt, in a process that we call saline preservation. Basically, the high concentration of salt creates a hostile environment for the growth of bacteria or fungus. And one common application of saline preservation is in the field of microbiology, where microorganisms are stored in a saline solution to preserve them for future study.
今日で91日目。ピクル君につながれたおびただしい数のパルス機器。ジュラ紀に活動していたというピクル君。そのジュラ紀に合わせたというこの実験室の温度。
So it looks like Pickle's been hooked up to some monitors to detect any signs of life. We can see he's got an ECG to detect his heart rate, his temperature to make sure he's not hypothermic, as well as monitors checking other vital signs, a bit like those that we'd use in hospitals.
200g ぐらいわかりゃしないって。
So, it looks like a T-Rex steak seems to be what's roused Pickle from his coma. And it's pretty funny because we don't fully understand why people come out of coma. Clearly, it's a multifactorial process, with one of those factors being adequate amounts of stimulation. In fact, some studies have shown that providing sensory stimulation, communication and emotional support can help someone become more aware of their surroundings and actually engage with them. So, as bizarre as it sounds, it's possible that a familiar smell like a T-Rex steak could have been what revived Pickle.
緊急時、人は考えない。おびただしい数の思いを後先の順番なく同時に感じるのである。
ピクル！でかい！見覚めたのかよ！あんだけやっても起きなかったの。レックスバグったの。
Yes, so this is very true. During a panic spell, several factors contribute to this rush of thoughts. Firstly, the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for emotions, becomes hyperactive, and this can account for the racing of your thoughts. Secondly, you have what's called cognitive distortions, which account for irrational thought patterns. Lastly, throw in a mixture of cortisol and adrenaline, and you've got yourself a recipe for a panic attack.
運命の利きたる拳銃。生身の素肌に3発撃ち込むも、ジュラ紀ファイター、ピクルの腹筋を貫くには、9ミリの弾頭ではあまりにも頼りなく、
There's no way that a 9mm bullet wouldn't penetrate through Pickle's muscle and potentially even his bones. I mean, if we just look at these examples of the destructive force this bullet can have, you'll understand my point. Mind you, if those bullets had been effective, this would have been a very short season.
MPBM 来年には正式に実戦配備されるでしょう。そのため彼は2年半もこのマシーンの中で日常生活を過ごさねばならなかった。甲斐あって今ではあの手を使い何でもできる。
So yes, the military are working on various forms of exoskeleton suits to help enhance the performance of their foot soldiers. From the ones that I've seen, they don't really look anything like this, and they are far less functional than what we've seen in this scene. In fact, as of yet, I don't think there are any that have been proven effective enough to be used in active duty.
一人の男としてそれは一頭のオスとして尊敬以上の感情が芽生えていた。
行こう。君に似つかわしい仲間たちのいるところへ。
I love how brave this guy is in removing his clothes before approaching Pickle. In some situations, removing your clothing can make you appear more vulnerable and less aggressive, so I can understand why he's done this. And I'm guessing that his experience with the Hanma family up until now has probably given him good instincts.
この後、このオスは一体何をするのか、どういう行動をとるのか。オスは眠った。
I guess this is going to be another clip that I'm going to have to look at for my Pickle anatomy video. But why do people normally fall asleep after having intercourse? Well, it's certainly multifactorial, and hormones have a big role to play, particularly prolactin and oxytocin. And you may have heard of oxytocin being referred to as the love hormone, as it tends to promote both bonding and relaxation, whilst prolactin, on the other hand, tends to reduce your arousal. So both of these combined together contribute to the feeling of calmness and contentment that Pickle's likely to be feeling in this scene.
その時突然兵士同士が殴り合いを始めたんです。彼黒服の男の見てる前で残った一人も止めるどころか殴り出したんですよ、自分を。
So they were so intimidated that they ended up beating themselves up. But what this is really asking is, can you be so afraid or intimidated that you actually end up harming yourself? And the answer is yes, you can in fact actually be scared to death. What's thought to happen is that with sudden intense fear, this leads to a surge of adrenaline, which can cause your heart rate and blood pressure to shoot up. Now, in someone with a pre-existing heart condition, this could contribute to a heart attack, which could ultimately kill you. So for those of you this applies to, stay away from this man.
ここか。すまぬ。
So it looks like Retsu struck this shoulder's cervical nerve, otherwise known as your vagus nerve. And by doing this, it can lead to a sudden drop in your heart rate and blood pressure, causing you to collapse. Now, please do take my word for it that it works, and don't try this at home. So why would you even do this in a fight? And in fact, how would you even develop this as a skill? I love the way that Yujiro Hanma seems to have some of the most obscure powers in this whole universe. Interestingly, however, for those of you who are interested, there is actually a world record for how quick you can do up your shoelaces, and I think it's under 2 seconds. Beat that, Yujiro Hanma.
入るぜ。
I love how he's offered the key and declines and chooses to walk through it anyway. And unfortunately, unless you're the Flash from the DC universe, there won't be any phasing through glass or walls for that matter. I mean, you could certainly walk through glass and cause it to smash, but it won't look anything like this.
自然界において動物は一様に皆身を隠して眠るものだが、見たまえこのふてぶてしさを。まるで無防備だ。金魚のネズミだ。
So, although it is true that most animals and even humans try to find shelter when they want to sleep, does our sleeping position actually tell us anything about our personality traits? Well, in short, no they don't, and any ideas that they do tend to stem from cultural beliefs rather than any scientific evidence. But just to go through a few playful examples, if you sleep in the fetal position, this means you're more likely to be an introvert, whereas if you sleep on your back, you're more likely to be an open and confident person. Let me know how you sleep down below.
学部のみに集中させた6連撃ピクルの頭部内壁に起こる溝の浸透おそらくは数千回ああたまらぬこの私服
So, just by taking 6 blows to the head does not mean that you end up with thousands of concussions. Remember that a concussion occurs where the brain is subject to a sudden acceleration or deceleration force, causing the brain to shake in the skull. And as doctors, we tend to describe a concussion in terms of severity of symptoms rather than the quantity of blows to the head.
肉組織骨格内臓どれも驚きの連続だったがとりわけ異彩を放つのが頸椎その太さ頑強さといったら
So, the C-spine in normal human beings tapers the closer it gets to the skull, with vertebral bodies only measuring several centimeters across. And what this allows is a greater range of movement in the neck in turning 180 degrees. However, the trade-off or vulnerability with this design is that the muscles around the neck tend to be far thinner and less supportive of the head, which ultimately means that if you take a blow to the head, you're more likely to jolt back, leaving you susceptible to a concussion.
食と生存生存と別れ共に分かちがたく
So to save Retsu's life, the doctor had to administer either a tranquilizer or an anesthetic. We see him administer this through a needle and Pickle goes out like a light. And this is pretty accurate as some anesthetics get to work almost instantly depending on their dosage and the route by which they're administered. In fact, you've probably seen a video where people have tried to stay awake despite having an anesthetic. Obviously, they always fail. The only question here is how long will this anesthetic keep Pickle asleep for?
普通に組手なら使わないよなこんな技明日や親子ならなおさらだ
Oh god, so that is a pretty lethal move there that Katsumi's performed on Doppo. He's effectively crushed Doppo's trachea, otherwise known as the windpipe, the pipe through which you breathe. Now, the subsequent bleeding and swelling that you can get after an injury like this can close off your windpipe, making it fatal. However, the fact that it's also Doppo Orochi kind of makes me think he'll be absolutely fine.
一周だこいつだけでここをぐるり一周するわけだその握力で拳固めぶったたく
Now, I've certainly seen people do push-ups on their fingers and thumbs. In fact, I've even seen a person do a full plank just on their fingertips. But I've never seen anyone actually walk on their thumbs. But I guess if you were theoretically able to master it, then you would be strengthening the muscles in your thenar eminence, allowing you to make a stronger fist. So I'll give Doppo the benefit of the doubt for this one.
確かこのようなものだったな通称マッハ好き君が持つ唯一私を驚かせた技だ
So here we see Retsu talking about the mach punch that Katsumi developed. Now, considering that the speed of sound is roughly 350 meters per second, and Bruce Lee holds the record for the world's fastest punch, with the 1-inch punch being in about 0.03 seconds, doing some simple maths tells me that Bruce Lee is roughly 500 times off the pace of Katsumi. And considering that Bruce Lee was one of our finest martial artists, I'd have to say that the mach punch isn't humanly possible.
この線ショックウェーブだ弾丸やジェット機火薬の爆発で生じる波動マッハを超えたことを知らせる波
So I always used to think that the cloud wave following these jets was its sonic boom, but apparently it's not. Let me explain. Basically, every object emits sound at a set speed. However, when an object moves faster than the speed of sound, it compresses all of these waves into one point, which we can see visualized as this cloud or shockwave. I hope that makes a bit more sense.
31個の骨片をジョイントさせた背骨うち動作に関係する17箇所の各骨片を同時加速可動部位計27箇所 だから壁を越えられる。
So, although this is really well animated, unfortunately the vertebral bodies just don't have this level of mobility within them. I mean, to a degree they can rotate on one another, however due to their underlying structure it is fairly limited. Really, the overall flexibility and range of movement of your vertebral column will come down to other factors like your muscular development, the laxity within the ligaments, as well as the surrounding connective tissue support.
肉体によるものではない。空気の壁、彼の手足が時速1225キロを超えた時、凄まじい負担を課したはず。
Yeah, so the injuries that Katsumi sustained were as a result of several different factors. Firstly, when moving against high speeds, you face air resistance, a bit like how a spacecraft would do on re-entering the atmosphere. Secondly, your tendons and ligaments wouldn't be able to sustain the amount of power that's being generated from that punch, causing your hand to ultimately explode. And lastly, hitting something over the speed of 100 kilometers per hour and then abruptly stopping would destroy your hand through the deceleration forces after impacting a hard object.
この男は倒されているのではない。勝手に眠っているだけ。
深刻なダメージは誰の目にも明らか。もうミスター克美に攻撃を加える必要はない。
So this abandoning of injured prey is something that's actually mimicked in the animal kingdom. For example, in orcas, if the seal that they're chasing becomes injured in the chase, they might lose interest and move on to other prey. Likewise, in some shark species that prefer to prey on both active and healthy animals.
なあ、ピクル。俺はうまいかい。約束は守る。
So I like how they spend the extra time and detail to draw the anatomy of the amputated limb. What we can see here is the ulna and the radius, which make up the forearm, as well as all the muscle fibres surrounding it. Also, they've accurately depicted what an arterial spray would look like, as you see blood just flying everywhere. It makes you wonder whether any of the artists have some experience with medicine.
今初めて出会うすれ違っただけの男に関する情報を何一つ持たないまま知識より先に60兆の細胞が反応した。
So, yes, at any given time, there is an estimated 60 trillion cells in the human body. And in relation to the feeling of intimidation, that is something which is primarily felt in the amygdala, which is part of the brain that helps to process emotions, particularly fear and threat-related emotions. Interestingly, once the amygdala is activated, it can stimulate the fight or flight response, which gives rise to all of the physical symptoms of intimidation also.
10年もの。
かしこまりました。
So, drinking whiskey like it's beer. I think this is the only person who could do it. Interestingly, however, it's the Asian population who have been shown to have a lower tolerance to alcohol when compared to other races. And it's thought to be due to the lack of an enzyme that helps to break down one of the toxic waste substances of alcohol, that is acetaldehyde. Ultimately, this makes it far harder for this population to consume greater quantities of alcohol. Being able to smoke a whole cigarette in one puff. I mean, that certainly tells us about the vital capacity of Yujiro Hanma's lungs. But I think I've actually seen some videos where people have tried this in real life. Please don't try this at home.
神っ子だ。ヤシの実を切り裂くまでに進化させた俺の抗菌力。
So, Jack Hanma trained his teeth by biting coconuts to shreds. Now, this is actually a method by which some people choose to get into their coconuts. Now, of course, it's not my preferred method, otherwise I think I'd be paying a regular visit to the dentist. But at least theoretically, this would help to bulk up the main muscles of mastication, those being your masseter muscles.
会いたくて
バキよ。
So from that first bite, you can tell that Jack knew he bit off more than he could chew. And if this was up for vote, I would say that this is the best anime kiss of the last decade. However, Pickle was always going to win this bite off, as Pickle spent the majority of his life chewing on dinosaur meat, compared to that of Jack Hanma's modern diet.
剥ぎ取られた顔面一目でそれとわかるドーピングのマックス反応
Okay, I didn't realise that Jack Hanma was still doping. I thought he'd stopped that after spewing it all up against BAKI. But what we're seeing here with this spasm in Jack's muscles is a common occurrence with steroid use, particularly if you've had a rapid increase in muscle mass, accompanied by inadequate stretching and muscle conditioning.
音とは言えぬ静寂の無音音右耳の無音なき左耳の無音左右の無音が違っていた
Okay, so this is after Pickles had his ear bitten off by Jack, and what I think they're trying to depict is the sensation of tinnitus, or ringing in your ears. Now this is a common phenomena that can occur after ear trauma, and it can be temporary or permanent with no definitive treatment. Most patients who have it end up just having to manage it. Oh god, this never gets any easier watching it. But the anatomy that they show here is very accurate, and we can see that he's got a mandibular fracture as well as a fracture to the maxillary bone shown here, which ultimately means if Jack ever wants to eat normally again, he's going to need to get some surgery.
多少手こずったもののついには仕留めた食べたその瞬間だった衝撃突如
Yes, so wasp stings can be incredibly painful, with some people being unfortunate enough to be allergic to the venom within their sting. But the reason they're so painful is that the venom directly stimulates the pain fibers found in the superficial layers of your skin.
やれることは全てやりました。まあ、あとは残るでしょうが。あと、頸椎に強いストレスがありますが、神経に問題はありません。まあ
Yeah, so of course Jack is looking at significant scarring after any surgery he has to his jaw. But you know, he's really lucky not to have sustained any damage to his spinal column, otherwise he could have resulted in being paralysed. Knowing Jack, however, had he been, I'm sure he would have found a martial arts to contend with.
倒されたその先、いかにして戦うかを考えていたはず。そのプランを五体に
So, the idea of someone being able to engrave a reflex upon their cells so that they can fight despite being unconscious is unfortunately impossible. I mean, I'm not saying you can't develop subconscious reflexes, but being able to react despite being KO'd just doesn't make any sense. Just think about it. How could you even train for such a scenario?
とにもかくにもバキは俺の血を引く明らかなハンマの系譜ジャックだってお主のあれは薄い
So the concept that Yujiro is trying to explain here, where his blood runs thin in Jack Hanma, does actually have some scientific background. It's called genetic imprinting, and it's a phenomena whereby certain genes from one of your parents might be more dominant than the others. Ultimately, this leads to the silencing of certain genes and the activation of others, which might explain why Jack Hanma doesn't have the demon back.
保存中の T-Rex の肉を使いバイオによる増殖を成し遂げつつあるのだ。クルが T-Rex を食べ尽くすまでの時間だが実験から実用化までには十分な猶予だ。
So here, it looks like they're trying to regrow T-Rex meat so to keep Pickle fed. And to be honest, this isn't that unrealistic. There are actually companies out there looking to develop lab-grown meat and 3D printed steaks to act as an alternative to the real thing.
30メートルからの落下のショック強烈な蹴りが溝落ちに食い込んだあの時のせり上がるだけせり上がり肺を押しつぶし
So here we see the impact of a fall from 30 foot, with BAKI injuring his solar plexus. And as it said, this can cause the diaphragm to go into spasm, causing it to contract upwards, squeezing the lungs down, making it very difficult for you to breathe. In fact, this is actually the reason why people feel winded if they take a blow to the abdomen or they fall onto their backs.
過去肉体のダメージでのみ発動した少年の脳内麻薬。その脳が肉体のダメージを経ずして反応した。
Yes, so we've seen in previous battles how the endorphins were triggered by Baki falling from heights or when he was fighting against Biscuit Oliver. But what else can trigger endorphin release? So really, there's many things, from pain to stress to laughter, all the way through to intense music and yes, even chocolate.
ここまで来るともう急所弱点という概念は消えるのです。なぜなら標的は人体最大の器官皮膚だからです。
Yes, so the skin is considered as an organ. It functions in terms of producing a barrier against bacteria. Also, it regulates your temperature and helps to sense your surrounding environment. Also, importantly, your skin contains your nerve-sensing pain fibers, with the highest density of them being in your fingertips, your lips and your tongue, as well as your genitalia. So Baki might want to attack one of those areas to be more effective.
腹から入った弾が横っ腹から抜けたり肩から抜けたり柔らかい腹の中で様々な影響を受けることがある。
So this bit is unfortunately only half true, as Hanayama is explaining that the internal organs can cause bullets to ricochet and thereby enter the body at one point and come out at another. However, it really comes down to the power of the rifle and the size of the bullet that you're shooting through the body, as shown in this scene.
の角に小指を強打した時、本物の痛みが訪れるまでに与えられた数春のいとま。脳はすでに衝撃の大きさからその痛みの予測を終えている。神が与えたもうた覚悟の時間。
So yes, this actually does happen in the brain. When you experience pain, your brain processes and integrates the sensory input combined with the emotional reaction to generate a memory. It's almost like your body's forming a catalogue of its greatest hits, ready to recall them at a moment's notice.
関節を組み替え、完全なる戦闘体系に変容した。
やっぱ言わなきゃならねえんだよな。勝負はここからだ。
I love the idea of pickle battle mode, but is it actually possible? Well, arguably, yes it is. It's like being in a relaxed position versus in a flexed position if you're a bodybuilder, or when you're in a relaxed position to being in a stance when you're gonna get into a fight. These changes in our posture often involve a rearrangement of our muscles and joints in preparation for us getting into a fight.
手にする武器が強力になるにつれ我々は一つまた一つと手放していったのだろう。自身の安全をも守れぬほどに。
Gosh, watching this clip was really depressing. As a population, we're certainly more sedentary than we ever have been, which is clearly contributing to the degradation of our physiques. Wouldn't it be far better if we returned to a time where we fought with our hands and feet?
攻撃一色に染まった心、縛るべき顎は開き、鍛え抜かれた首の筋肉は緩み切っている。被弾を忘れた肉体への迎撃。もはや10秒程度での生還は望むべくもなく。
Yes, so certainly having a relaxed jaw during a fight makes you an easy target for an opponent. And there are many reasons why your jaw relaxes during a fight, from increasing your ability to breathe to a reflex relaxation as part of your body's stress response. Therefore, more experienced fighters will know this and try to consciously control this relaxation, or at least defend their jaw at all times, recognizing it's a weak point.
炭素に10万気圧の圧力を加えるとダイヤモンドに変化するという理屈。ミスターオーガよ、核より強力と言われる君のその握力ならどうだろう。
I love the way that Barack Obama made it into this anime. Now, just to complete it, we need Donald Trump and Joe Biden. But focusing on the point, you can certainly artificially make a diamond with sufficient pressure and force. However, being able to do this, unfortunately, is 100% impossible. I'm sorry, Yujiro Hanma. Okay, so it turns out that the Pickle Saga is in fact very medically accurate. Let me know your opinion about any of the points that we've covered today, or if there's anything else you wanted more information on, please do leave me a question down below. Otherwise, as always, thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks.